share that with you guys. It says, voices of culture and expectations of others will always lead you to a feeling of inadequacy or a need to perform. Recognize that God has never required more of you than you can possibly accomplish. So if you feel overwhelmed, it can often be because you're living by someone else's expectations. The author then goes on to say, if I'm not grounded in what I believe and why, then I will easily be tossed about by the waves of opinion. And so that struck me very hard because I struggle big time with living in a culture that doesn't always want me to parent the way God would want me to parent. And I struggle greatly with, I compare myself, my journey, my children, the way I parent. I can struggle with that a lot. And so, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Allison Peck. I have a 7-year-old, an almost 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And as we will talk earlier, I also have an identical twin, which kind of helps maybe frame where I'm coming from with this comparison journey and how my family, our family, chooses to live in the culture but not be of the culture. And so I'll share some of our resources that we use as a family too. So.
And I'm Sarah Watson. I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. And a lot of my perspective comes from being an adoptive mom and having one child with special needs and one without. We'll get more into that as we go.
You all know me, I'm Sharon Pruitt, and my perspective in this is one as a parent who has already raised her children. I have a almost 40-year-old special needs child and then 2 boys that are 33 and 30. And my unique perspective of this is one of being able to not being able to compare myself to anybody else's family, because my family was very different than any other family that we were involved with.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what's so hard too, that all of our families are so different. That it seems like in our culture, we want to conform.
We all want to be the same.
We all want to be the same, and we all want to look the same, and we want everything to look happy and be happy. And that is so not what God created us for. We talked earlier about, I often find myself, going to others before I will go to God and say, okay, what would you have me do in this situation? And so I sometimes wonder, am I the only one that does this? Am I the only one that really struggles with this? So I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
As I shared with you before, I wasn't sure what I could bring to this conversation because comparison isn't something that I struggle with. I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect mom,
Sure.
but this isn't an area I struggle with, and so you encouraged me to talk about how I got to this point in my parenting journey where it's not a struggle. For a backstory, I used to be a pediatric oncology nurse, and so this is before I had kids, and so I saw kids be very sick, and kids died, and I realized that we get one chance. We get one chance with our kids, we get one chance in our family, and I wanted to make sure that I did it right. And not right to my standards, not right to what the culture says, but right to what God says. And so I like to call it, put on our cultural blinders in our family. We look at our children, my husband and I, and we look at them, and I know that God gave them to me. God equipped me to parent my kids. And when I can put on those blinders and look at my oldest and say, God, I think I know this is what He helped me here. How can I, what does He need? Does He need to be in 2 activities? Does He need to be in 3? And then be confident that God has given me the wisdom to enroll him in whatever he needs, whether it be swimming, basketball, whatever. But always looking at him with blinders on, but through the lens of Jesus. Knowing that Jesus gave me him, and that I'm his parent, and trusting Jesus to give me those skills to get him to where he needs to be. It's not easy.
It's not.
You know, with social media and all of that stuff, you see what everyone else is doing, and it is hard. But if you keep practicing it every day, to put those blinders on and to look through the lens of Jesus, then it becomes easier to get to that point.
I like that, the confidence. I like that. I hadn't really thought of that. That's a really good point, that we have to be confident in what God has given us, and whether it's a struggle or not a struggle. And I think that's a really good point. Yeah. Do you struggle with anything?
I do.
Good, I'm not the only one.
No, you're not. I think for me, being an adoptive mom has really had an impact on the way I parent. It is the biggest blessing. I love being an adoptive mom, but we had the unique and beautiful opportunity to be chosen by our children's biological moms. And both of them chose us because they wanted their kids to have a different life, a quote-unquote better life than what they could have provided for them, just because of where they were in their lives at the time. And something I found myself doing and struggling with is, am I giving them the life their birth moms would have wanted them to have? Instead of looking at the fact, the flip side of this is we're all handpicked to be our children's parents. But we were truly handpicked to be our children's parents. And it's easy for me to take my eyes off of the Lord and put my eyes on, am I parenting the way that their birth moms would want me?
So meeting their expectations.
Yes, instead of meeting God's expectations. And, just really second guessing and questioning myself instead of being confident that I am their mom because God chose me to be, not because their birth moms chose me to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Making those decisions for the Lord
and
not for their birth parents.
Absolutely. And I have found shame and guilt to be two things that Satan can definitely use on me as a parent. And I think sometimes too my children can see that also, that I'll kind of backpedal or second guess myself, and instead of being confident and instead of consulting God first, I might, if one of my kids comes to me and says, can I do this? So-and-so is doing this. I'll be quick to say, yeah, sure. Instead of saying, let's think about that. Let's think about our schedule. Let's really, is this something God wants us to be doing? And whereas this other family, it may work beautifully for their family. And actually that's an example I have. I've committed to so many things in my life, and I've committed my children to so many things out of guilt and people pleasing, instead of talking to God and saying, okay, do you really want me on 12 different committees and my kids in 4 different activities per kid? Or do you need me to take a step back and serve harder and more in your name on one committee and each child in maybe 2 activities instead?
Right.
And so I find that I have a tendency to want to keep up and meet the expectations of our culture by being busy. I got to thinking this morning, and time is a lot like money. We can make the choice to spend our money in certain places, and we can make the choice to spend our time in certain places. And it's sometimes I find that I like to just overindulge my time instead of thinking, okay, I have a budget of time, and how does God want me to spend that? What's the best way to spend that? And teaching my children that same thing.
Right. I think we have a desire for our kids not to miss out on anything.
Yeah.
And so, when their friends are doing other things, we don't want them to miss out. But coming from a parent who's on the other side of raising my children, there were times, because we had a special needs child, that we couldn't go and do things because we couldn't take her with us, or we couldn't, whatever the situation was. But looking back on that, it made my boys who they are. And so I can't ever feel bad about that, because they wouldn't be the people that they are, the adults that they are today, the parents that they are today, had they not been through the journey that God put us on. And so I have to trust, we all have to trust that the journey that we're on is the one that God wants us to be on.
Yes.
Right.
So in our family, we have worked hard for the last year or so developing what we call our family culture. We've worked on like a family mission statement, what our motto is, what's important to us as our family. When I say family, our core, my husband and I and our 3 kids. And we have a mission statement. We have our family rules that we've all sat down and come up with. We have a silly thing like that we made up that when someone's breaking a family rule, we say, "Oh, you're being a bank robber." And it's really funny to hear my almost 4-year-old call out my 7-year-old, "You're being a bank robber." Woo, woo, woo. And but it gives them a sense of belonging in our family.
Yeah.
And so when something comes up that we talk, well, my friends are doing this, so we can sit down and well, what do we do in our family? Is that something that is good for our family and our culture? And it gives them a sense of, well, I don't think so. It gives him a choice to decide if that's going to work in our culture or not. And so that's something that we have used as a family, is to do that and then to stick with it and to make sure that our kids have that sense of belonging in our culture, so that they're not so distracted by the outside culture, that they have that core sense of that family culture that we have.
Yeah, that's great advice.
So,
that's really good advice.
We've worked really hard with that. And we have a painting, we have our rules up where we can all see them and we talk about them. We have a family meeting every week where we talk about what we're doing this week. Do we need to make changes? What are we talking about? I mean, it's 30 minutes it takes us, and Sunday afternoons is what we chose. And so just some more tools maybe that helps get us to where we don't play that comparison game and we just stay focused on what God is calling our family to do for that week.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I started doing that this past year with our kids. I did something right. So go me. Yeah, once a week we will sit down, and we don't have a designated day of the week yet, but we just somehow it works out every week at night. We'll all meet together, and it's for 30 minutes, and we'll talk to each other and say, okay, how can I pray for you? And it's interesting to hear, Natalie tell me the things that I can color well tomorrow, or or Aiden, I'll ask him, and we'll share what's going on in the family, or what we might have coming up, or where we feel like God has our family. And you're right, it does. It helps. I've noticed it has helped both of our children feel very much like they belong. They have a sense of identity in a family, and I think that's really important. So that
comes back to your idea of time.
Yeah.
It's where you spend your time. That's probably the best time to spend.
You're right.
A lot better time than going here, going there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Something I know for our family that's been really important, and it comes from a lesson that I've learned with the Lord and goes along with what we're talking about, is authenticity.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really, really good at putting on a happy face. And not just in front of my friends, not just in front of my peers, but in front of my kids. And that's something that the Lord has really worked to tear off my face in the last year and a half, and has really opened up huge conversations in our home and with both kids, is being authentic. And authenticity is sometimes really ugly.
Yes.
But, it's been amazing, especially having a 12-year-old, and a 12-year-old who is, she's not built like the normal teeny tiny itty bitty 12-year-old. Being able to open up and have those conversations with her, and say, it's okay. I don't always like my curly hair either. I don't always like whatever. Instead of always having my hair perfect or always pulling it straight, it's just allowed me to open up and say, this is who God made me, and it's okay. It's totally okay, because this is who He wants me to be.
Yeah.
Not who He wants you to be, not who He wants your brother to be, who He wants you to be. And so it's just opened up so many doors, and it's opened up awesome doors for friendships, and
that's a really good
so
point.
many.
We were talking earlier, all of us, about how all of this can kind of tie back to competing with one another. That, well, I've got to match up to your standard or your standard, and how sometimes we can be together in community and we're not really building each other up.
Right.
We're sitting here comparing academia or extracurriculars or awards or whatever. And I think when we're in a place like that, we can't really have authentic relationships like you had suggested, and we can't really pick each other's brains for advice and really take in what other people have been through and their journey and how that could apply to our world. I know that's been the case for me many times, that I'll find out, maybe some other child got a better grade than Aiden, and I'm like, what is going on? That I get all in a tizzy, and I'm like, this is not how it is supposed to be. We're supposed to be, we're a team, we're a team as moms, as parents, as a school, working with parents, as teachers working with parents. I think sometimes when we get so stuck in that comparison and in the voices of the culture, we can get on Facebook or whatever social media and see, well, this child got this award, how come my child didn't get this award? And that can leave us feeling very shamed and guilted. Yes. And I think that's where you're having confidence comes in.
I was going to say the confidence and the trusting that so when you are confident and when you do trust Jesus to equip you to parent your kids, then you can be authentic and celebrate accomplishments with your other friends and teach your kids to do the same. There's been times when my oldest has come home from school and said, oh, so-and-so did this. I'm like, well, did you celebrate with them? Were you excited with them? And he sometimes will say yes, and sometimes he'll say, well, no, because I want that. And then it just opens up another conversation of, well, but you can't have that because that's not what God has called you to. Here's your talents, here's your gifts. We can celebrate this in your friends, and just making sure that but it comes to us too. We have to do that ourselves so that we can teach our kids to do that too. And it's a process. I'm not going to say it took, it didn't take me overnight to get here. It's been a process. I've studied a lot of women in the Bible. That really helped me. We're mothers of the Bible too, and but just being authentic, like you said, and confident that He gave you your kids. He gave me my kids, and let's celebrate each other. Yeah, because someone's success doesn't take away from my success. And teaching our kids that we can celebrate success, because there's not a finite amount of success to go around. And I think we all can get caught up in that. Well, if so-and-so did this, then I can't do that. But that's not true. That's what Satan wants to tell us. Right. There's not a finite number, because our God is infinite. And so when we ground ourselves in that, then we all can experience that success. And success in God's eyes, not what culture says.
Sure, absolutely. And we can also realize too, if your child wins this award but my child doesn't, that yes, that's a success for your child, and as a parent that's going to make you feel so proud. But how can that glorify God? That God is glorified through that success. And I think if we can put on that lens and think, the heavens are rejoicing over this success. What a cool thing. That lays aside a lot of that comparison and things like that is what are our children bringing to the kingdom through, a spelling award or a sports award or whatever.
So let's just kind of wrap this up and see if we can kind of bring out the points that we've brought out. One is confidence. We definitely have to have confidence in our own abilities. God has given us what we need to be the parents that we need to be. So having that confidence that we can do or will do what God wants us to do if we allow that. The authenticity, being authentic, not only with ourselves but with our kids. We're not perfect. We're going to mess up, but being authentic and just letting them know that we're all struggling with the same things. I love the family culture. That's such a great idea of creating your own family culture so that there isn't that comparison of, well, how come that child got to do this or that family got to do this, because that doesn't fit into our family culture. So creating that is just such good advice.
Yeah, I agree. And then grace, I think, would be the last thing that comes to my mind, is just allowing us to let those things wash off where we do mess up, wash off where we do struggle and compare, and just let grace cover us because we are going to mess up, you know.
Exactly. And I think I would just add guilt. Anytime you are trying to walk and do something for the Lord, Satan's going to come in and he's going to try to derail you. And he, you know, we have to remember he is the one who is placing those doubts and placing the guilt and the comparison and all of those things. And he knows the exact time to put whatever on social media or how a kid get an award or anything like that. He knows. And
You're
so
absolutely right.
just remember, the more you try to succeed, the more he's out to bring you down.
Yeah, very true. All right. Sounds
Thank
good. Well,
you.
thank you. This was a good conversation.
Yes,
I loved it.
that's
Thank
good.
you.
You're welcome.